Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and for the next hour-ish, as you saw from our introduction, we are going to talk about the fiction faction. What is that exactly? You're going to find out. But before I begin, like we always start every show, a few little housekeeping rules. We are live this evening. If you would like to email me with a suggestion for a future topic or have a question for our guests, and you may have missed their particular email address, you can always email me at talk@bcattv.org. And I would also like to thank the crew for this evening, staff members John Vias and Chris Flaherty. Make sure all of us volunteers get everything running smoothly. And speaking of volunteers, we have Evan McNamee, Lucian Gates, and Christina Nikitas, who have given up their Wednesday evening to come hang out at BCAT, for which I am eternally grateful. Last, but definitely not least, I would like to thank my husband Paul for staying home for Daddy Date Night. Hopefully, homework is going smoothly, and so is cat integration. So we'll talk more about cat integration later. But now I would like you to meet our wonderful guests, Jessica Smetana. Sorry, and you are a BHS
high school English
teacher, but also the faculty advisor for the fiction faction, and a whole lot more, which we'll find out momentarily. And Luke Flanagan you are a senior at BHS.
That I am.
And you established the fiction faction, which I can't wait to find out all about that. So thank you both for giving up your Wednesday evening to come hang out at BCAT and tell me all about your adventures in creative writing. So before we jump into the whole writing aspect of your lives, which seems to be relatively significant, tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you grew up. You're still growing up, kind of, although I hope you don't grow too much more up. Where you went to school, how you came to the Burlington area, and we'll let her go first. And while she's doing that, can you kind of prepare to tell us what your plans are for after high school?
All right.
Not like 3 o'clock, like in June.
Yeah,
okay.
I figured.
Okay. So what is your story?
What's my backstory? Well, I grew up in upstate New York, just outside of Saratoga Springs. Actually grew up in a log cabin that my parents built from the trees on their land.
Cool.
They were like 70s back to the land people. But then I went on to go to college in Vermont at the University of Vermont, where I majored in English. And while I was there, I had a job at the writing center, the student writing center. And
cool.
That was the place where I really fell in love with the collaborative aspect of coaching writers and really working with writers one-on-one. So when I became an English teacher later on, I always just sort of had that model of that collaborative writing center space, and sort of craved it, in
like
the high schools where I worked.
You could go with the literature side of things, where you just read everything.
Right.
But it sounds like you're more interested in the.
Well, I'm just really interested in helping young people find their voices as writers, and I feel like that happens a lot more naturally through conversation. So my first job as a teacher was in Vermont. And I was hired to work at this place called the White Table. And I was like, how can I work at a table? But the White Table was like their writing center. It was like a writing tutoring center. I guess maybe back in the day, that person sat at a white table. Yeah.
Okay.
But I really loved that job because it gave me a chance to work with writers who were there because they wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And they would come in and they'd say, I'm working on this, I'm struggling, or would you give me some feedback? And I just built really great relationships with students that way. And I was actually in graduate school to become a teacher at the time. And then when I got my first gig as a classroom teacher, I realized I've got 67, 68 students. I can't sit with each one of them. I can't actually give them that kind of personalized writing attention. 60
students, let's just round it off to 60 for easy math. In a 45-minute period, that's like less than a minute a person.
Well, I would have about 20 students, 25 students, but still, if I gave each of those kids 5 minutes of my feedback, I still can't really
There's not a lot you can do in
reach
5
them.
minutes.
Right, right. So I always was just sort of missing that and kind of pining for it. So let's see, so when I left Vermont, when my husband got a job in Boston, and at the time my own daughters were really tiny, so I was home for a little while, and then when I was ready to go back to work, that's when I found the job here at Burlington.
Cool.
Yeah, it's funny, I went to college in Burlington, Vermont, and now here I am working in Burlington, Mass.
And if you still say you live in Burlington, or you teach in Burlington,
It gets
they're going to
confusing
say,
sometimes, I know.
Vermont?
Yeah.
No. Pretty big commute.
Right, right. But I just always had in the back of my mind this idea that there really could and should be a space for students to collaborate in a really dynamic place like a writing center, and that we could create that culture here.
Oh.
And so it's been a slow process. COVID sort of bumped us back a little bit. But you know, now we've got a writing center, and we've got motivated student leaders like Luke who not only enjoy writing, but they love helping other people with their writing. And that's really part of our mission, is to help kind of elevate the culture around writing at the school.
Now, before it's Luke's turn, I have one more question for you,
Sure.
which I hope is just one more question. When you first realized you wanted to get involved in teaching, did you always know you wanted to be at the high school level, or did you just want to share that love of reading and writing, or did you ever, had the thought ever occurred to you to teach like elementary schools? Students?
Well, I actually did teach elementary school for a while. Yeah,
okay.
I lived in the Caribbean and I taught 5th grade, but and I loved it. But at the same time, I think about like my own formative experience as a shy introvert who liked to read and write, and I thought about those teachers that really drew me out through my writing, and how valuable their comments were to me through writing, and how writing just became the space where I could communicate openly
you.
and experiment. And I just really loved the just the relationship that I developed with teachers. There's really a special rapport that you develop with a teacher that's giving you feedback. And for me as an adolescent, that meant a lot. So I really wanted to sort of pay that forward.
Excellent. And we'll find out how momentarily, because it's your turn. So I'm hoping you kind of probably grew up in
decades
Burlington,
to catch us up on.
Massachusetts.
Yep, very much so.
And you are a senior.
That I am, yes. So after,
What do you do for fun, and what are your plans for after June?
well, writing creatively is most, I'd say, of what I do for
Okay.
fun. It's certainly the most active thing I do.
Okay.
After high school, I'm planning on studying creative writing at Emerson College. It's not a
Cool.
definite that it will be Emerson, but it seems fairly likely.
Okay. Now, have you sent in applications yet, or is that
I
like-
have applied to Emerson, but I'm still working on applications to various other schools.
Okay. It's been a really long time since I applied to college, so
Yeah.
I don't remember the
Right.
timeline exactly.
There are a lot of dates. But after college, I hope to get into the editing field so I can read other people's work for
cool.
fun.
Okay.
Well, the fun and profit, of course.
Well, yeah, getting
Yeah.
paid to do something you like is,
Yes,
is
that
kind of
is-
helpful.
Yeah, and if it turns out that my work is economically viable, then I will do that professionally. If not, I will be just as happy.
Cool. And you still,
Writing as a hobby, yeah.
yeah, do you like to write like creatively
Oh, yes.
all the time, or do you like, well, actually, we're going to find out more about that right now. How did you guys, either of you, both of you, decide that creative writing is your passion? Did it start from reading and branch out, or how did you figure that out?
Do you want to go first?
All right, sure. My parents told me stories that they made up pretty much whenever I asked them, which was a lot. I really liked listening to stories. As I was falling asleep, sometimes as they were falling asleep, which made for some very interesting stories about,
Oh, I'm
quote,
sure.
the hoot owl place and a French airplane. I'm not sure what they were talking about, and neither are they to this day.
Okay.
But whilst they were conscious, and I was conscious, I discovered that while storytelling may not be the most word-efficient way to get across a message, it is the most emotionally impactful way, and that's certainly part of it. I mean, escapism, seeing all these things that you can create and that have been created that are just so very beautiful.
Yeah.
And I also love character. I think character is my favorite part because
Like character
absolutely. Mine too.
development?
Yes.
Mine too.
Okay.
and just people.
Where do you get your ideas? They just
I
pop into
really
your head, or?
Yeah, I really
Okay.
couldn't say. They mostly spin out of my subconscious, and I have no idea where my subconscious gets them.
Well, I'm just, remembering there's a writer, Carl Hyacin. I don't know if you've ever heard of him at all, but he writes about experiences that are in Florida. And they're the most bizarre things that ever happen, but he actually pulls them from news stories.
Yeah.
And it's like, really?
That's really funny.
So I was wondering if, like, you heard a story, like something happened in school, or you read something on the news and go, oh, well, what would have happened if?
Well, I can think of one instance in particular. My grandfather told me a brief anecdote about his time in the National Guard. One of his lieutenants, who could not see a thing, he had gigantic glasses, and his pistol holster was filled with cookies. And he told my grandfather to blow up a bridge that was not on government property, but he said he would cover for him. And so that is now a
Great.
character.
Okay, I love
that's
it.
great. That's great.
I'd love to find out more about the cookies, but that's okay.
Well, listening to you say that you are really fascinated by people, I can really relate to that, because I think my love for creative writing might have been sparked by my curiosity about people as a child. And I remember being in the grocery store as a kid, having to look after my younger brother, my little sister, and my dad would always say, go sit on that bench over there while we check out. So there was
Okay,
always a
yep.
bench at the checkout. And I remember just being so fascinated by other people's groceries. And I remember
Really? Okay.
narrating to my brother, you can tell a lot about a person by their groceries.
they buy.
And so he and I would sit there and we would construct these entire lives of these people just based on the contents of their cart.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And so we would just sort of riff off of, our observations. And then I found, you can do that at the airport, you could do it on a bus, just sort of imagining the internal lives and pasts and relationships of the people that you observe. So I, like you, am fascinated by character, and I like to start there when I write a story.
Do you prefer like a short story versus the idea for a novel?
I'm
or-
always thinking it's going to become a novel, but it never does. It always just ends up as a short story, yeah. But one of my favorite creative writing exercises for both myself and I think we tried this in our first meeting of Fiction Faction. You think of a character,
Okay.
and then you need to give that character both a secret and a motivation. And so if you just write for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, but you start with writing from that character's point of view, I've never told anyone this, but.
Yes.
And it
we did.
really
That was
leads
great.
to, it really leads
Cool.
to like, well, what is their deep, dark desire or secret? What are they not wanting the other people in their world to know?
Yeah.
I've never told anyone this, but, and that sort of confessional can really give rise to an interesting story.
Oh, I would love to read
Yeah.
that.
And I also remember, I'm sorry, I realized
Yeah.
I'm going off, but one of the best creative writing tasks that I was ever given was by my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Pagano. We read a short story called The Contents of a Dead Man's Pocket.
Ooh,
And it's a very interesting short story. I won't summarize, but he walked around the room with, maybe it was a box, I don't quite remember, but you had to reach inside, and that was the content of the dead man's pocket. And then you had to go home and write a story about someone who died, and this was the content of their pocket, and write the story. And I just remember that being so fascinating to
You know,
think
maybe
about.
if my English teacher did that, I'd be a little more
see, I
interested
know,
in
maybe,
creative
I
writing.
don't know. Who knows? If
Instead
I hadn't
of memorizing
had
the
that exercise.
Highwayman, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
so that
short
was a lot of
story
fun.
or poetry, or it sounds like with your character development kind of lends itself more to a story as opposed to like haiku or, you know.
Yeah, and I always tell my students that you could really summarize just about any story with somebody wanted, but so then. And I say this to my daughter who has a lot of trouble summarizing like the movie she just saw. So
okay.
I'll say, well, who was it and what did they want? But then what got in the way? And so how did they respond? And then how did it resolve? And then if I want them to get fancy, I'll say, so what? What's the
I
theme?
like
What's the
that.
moral of the story?
Okay.
So when I'm teaching creative writing, I'll say, let's get our somebody. You know, let's create our profile.
Okay.
And then what do they want more than anything in the world?
They want to tell
And
their
then,
secret.
right, so then you start getting into the desire. Okay, and then there has to be, you can't give it to them that easily,
Right.
otherwise there's no story. So something has to get in the way.
Of course.
And that's where the interesting
Plot
stuff
twist.
happens. Yes. Yeah.
So, how did you decide that this is your thing?
I think I didn't really decide, but I just had an idea.
Okay.
One day, any day really. And then I wrote it down because if you don't write it down, it stays in there. You don't forget these things. You kind of wish you could sometimes, but they just stick
Okay.
in there and then they pile up. And
Okay.
it,
So if I don't write it down, it
yeah.
just goes away. But
Yeah, I'm like you. Those things get lost. That's why I
Everything
write
oh,
it
it'll
down.
be 18 again.
everything but the stories. Everything but the stories is gone.
I love it.
But the stories stay in there.
Okay. So let's kind of, I do want to talk about fiction faction, but you had mentioned after, when I thought there was only the
right.
club of fiction faction, you actually established a writing center at the high school. Or you
Right, so
started
there's
one or developed
there's a
one, or-
place, the Writing Center, and
Okay.
then there's a course, which is a elective course called Writing Fellows, and so
Okay.
we can't really have one without the other. I mean, I guess we could have Writing Fellows without a Writing Center, but my
wouldn't
classroom
be the
just
same.
wouldn't,
They
wouldn't be the
wouldn't
same.
have any place to go.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So Luke is and was and continues to be a writing fellow, which means
Okay.
that he took as a junior 2 semesters of writing fellows. So he took Writing Fellows 1 and Writing Fellows 2.
Okay.
And he learned how to work with other writers and give constructive feedback and run small group sessions and teach from the front of the room. And
Cool.
sometimes
so it's
he'll
more
go
than
into
just
other
an
classes.
English class.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on how do you help other writers develop as writers, and without writing it for them, how do you sort of pull it out of them?
Okay.
And we're, very process
Do you, like,
oriented.
practice on each
So we
other?
do, yeah. That's actually one of
okay.
the first assignments. Yeah. So we, learn how to ask open-ended questions and how to. What are some of the other sort of principles of being a good writing fellow? Open-ended questions, letting the writer own the session and own the paper. We don't insert anything of ours into their paper.
The power of silence, I'd say. Yeah.
Yes, wait time, think
Oh,
time. I remember
yeah.
saying
Yeah.
a lot, silence is the
still-
sound of thinking.
I
So
still
don't be
haven't
afraid
learned
of it.
that lesson.
Just because the student you're working with is sitting there quietly doesn't mean that you have to jump in. Let them think. And then we have the technique of, well, I'm just going to go sharpen these pencils while you
Yeah.
think, because otherwise some of us just want to jump right in.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's the class and then there's the space. And Luke was interested in continuing as a writing fellow because he was not graduating like many of the others. And so we sort of together created Writing Fellows 3. So this is the first year that we're taking it into a third semester.
So it's actually like a class.
Yeah, so he's the only one in the class, so we're calling it Writing Fellows 3 Leadership. And so I wanted him to take on a leadership role and develop something of his own so that he'd be able to have something that was like his pet project.
Right,
And so
yeah.
I knew that Luke had taken
You
a
need
few
that
of these.
opportunity to
Yeah.
do something. Okay.
Right, right. So knowing, Luke's interest and talent and history with writing workshops, and he had taken a few, I'm sure he'll talk to you about it later, but his summer programs, I thought, well, this is exactly why we have a writing center, is to bring that energy and that passion and that interest and that love for writing that's not for a grade, that's not for a teacher, that's not to hit the third column on the rubric, but to really just create a community around writing. Why don't I just let him take what he loves and run with it and see where he goes?
Okay,
And
so
together we planned this fiction faction, which is modeled after the summer writing programs that he's taken.
Okay, so I want to find out about the summer writing programs because that's news to me. See, it's hard coming up with questions when it's
Right.
not interactive. With the writing center,
Yeah.
these students that you help, are you helping them with like real writing assignments that they will get graded on? Or is it just their creative writing experience?
That is a great question. So now, thanks to Luke's influence, I would say, with Fiction Faction, we get a lot more students coming in to use the Writing Center for their own creative pursuits, which is exactly what we wanted from
Okay.
the beginning. But we do also help a lot of students who are saying, I just got assigned this paper and I don't understand what I'm really supposed
Yeah.
to do, or I'm having trouble getting started, or I have an outline but I need help with my assertion.
Right,
Or
okay.
teachers will invite us to come join them as their students are drafting to just sort of spot check, sit at a
Okay.
student's elbow for a minute or two, and
Okay.
just sort of help them along as they're writing. So mostly we were getting a lot of students who were asking for help on assignments, but now with
Okay.
our monthly themes and some of our
Oh, it's like
journaling
migrating to-
initiatives, we're getting a lot more creative writing. We just did like a 2-sentence horror story
Yes.
contest in
Oh,
October
those
for
were
Write for
great.
Fright. This month in November, we had the theme of Write for Gratitude, and so we have
Ooh,
a
okay.
gratitude journal prompt a day, and then those are, I guess tomorrow's the last day they could submit them, right? Tomorrow's the last day in November, and we'll do a prize drawing. We've been
cool.
focusing on, the benefits of gratitude journaling, and then for December, we decided on De-stress December, the role that writing can play in elevating one's mental well-being. So
'Cause you
that's
can
the fun
write
stuff.
all these horror stories in more than 2 sentences, so you don't have to
Yeah.
live it.
So yeah, we try to do those themes so that we get students in the door to just write for fun.
Okay. How far in advance do you have to plan your months? Like, do you have January's ideas yet, or?
We knew we kind of have a basic idea of like what the theme will be, and
Okay.
then,
Okay, like
ideally,
October has to be horror,
Yeah. Right for
Come on.
right. But
Come
I would be lying if I said we have like December totally planned out. We just know we're going to have a couple of flex blocks and a
Yeah.
couple. We're going to take our show on the road and go into classrooms and give teachers a break.
Cool.
And just say we'll teach a little de-stress December writing workshop, and you can take a break. So
Love it.
yeah.
Okay, so you took the Writing Fellows coursework, and at some point I want to find out how you can introduce a new class to curriculum, but that could be a whole other episode. You took that class, really liked it, created volume 3,
Yes.
and then what are these summer courses?
Right.
Most kids go to school during the summer because they're failing, but it sounds like you wanted to go.
Oh, yes.
Opted in, yeah.
Yes. These are creative writing workshops. I've taken 3, but one was during COVID, so really 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only
Talk about horror stories. No.
yeah. So.
Are they like through Middlesex Community College?
Oh
or-
no, no, they're separate. One was through Harvard Extension School.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other one was through Emerson College.
Okay. Now, do you get college credit
Yes.
for taking? Oh,
Yes, they're
sweet.
month long.
Okay.
The Harvard.
Assuming that where you go will accept the credits, because that's a whole other
Yes,
thing.
but
Okay.
yeah. So
So how'd you find out about these courses, and what were they specifically? And yeah,
well, the writing workshop, it seems to be fairly, I don't know, well defined.
okay,
I did roughly the same thing in both Harvard and Emerson, but they were very different.
okay,
For example, Harvard was only twice, maybe 3 times a week.
okay.
And it was one specific class, whereas Emerson was, well, it was residential. It had 5 separate classes.
Like every day? Or?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes. Really, the writing workshop is focused on generating a piece of fiction, submitting it to peers. There's some teacher intervention, but it's mostly light. It's on roughly the same level as one's peers.
Okay.
So people just, we go around and discuss what worked, what people really liked, what potentially one could improve,
Okay.
things of that ilk.
Now, did you end up having like a final piece at the end that you
yes.
can like continue?
Yes.
It's, I can imagine not being able to write a novel in a summer.
Yeah. For Harvard, I workshopped a short story, which I started on the 3rd day of class, and I didn't finish it in time, but I continued working on it and finished it based on the peers' feedback, and that is now a 68-page novella, which I think is my best work yet.
Excellent.
And for Emerson, because there were many classes, I did several things. I finished several comedy skits, sketches, and
Okay.
monologues, and a flyer, I think, and a graphic novel, which was completely new to me, but I
Okay.
quite enjoyed it.
Cool. Now, for the
and-
graphic novel, did you do the illustrations and the story?
No, it
or-
was more of a script.
Okay.
Like telling the illustrator what you want, and
okay.
I am working on a novel that I started there.
Cool. Where do you get your ideas for what you write about? I can't imagine just waking up one morning, I'm going to write a novel about.
Oh, no. It depends. I'll come from different places. Like, for example, I was doing one of my usual Wikipedia rabbit hole jaunts. That's what I do for fun or when I don't have homework. And I found, I stumbled upon the Wikipedia page for a book called The Red Dragon, purporting to be from the time of Solomon. It's not. It's
Okay.
The early
On
19th
the
century.
internet, it's got to be true.
The early 19th century was rife with hoaxes because people like to feel superior to people in the past. Anyway, it's a magic textbook, and it lists as one of the demons it describes Lucifuge Rofocal, who is, quote, Prime Minister of Hell, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
Hell has a prime minister, apparently.
Why
and
not?
So,
Yeah.
I thought, because most people think of hell, if they think of hell, as sort of anarchy, chaotic flames,
Yeah.
and terror. What if that wasn't the problem? What if the problem was there was too much bureaucracy and it kept getting in the way of itself? And that
That's
somehow
not fiction.
resulted.
Oh, sorry.
No, it really isn't. And somehow that became 68 pages.
Cool.
Yeah.
So instead of escaping, you were escaping into a less pleasant environment, but
Yes.
nonetheless enjoyed it.
But
yeah.
you have such control over that.
Yes,
That is true.
Right, right.
Yes.
Now, I'm also wondering, trying to find those ideas and develop those ideas into a story. Like taking the Prime Minister from hell, or of hell, well, what is that story? And developing that in the story. I'm also curious that, okay, you had this writing class, and then now you have, a class in school, part of one of your courses, as well as fiction faction. How do you sit down and say, I'm going to be creative now?
It's difficult at first. At first, you just write when inspiration strikes you. But once you've got something written,
Okay.
If you want to sit down and you look at it, and you'll start some bad writing because you're not used to it, but then it'll get good. And
Okay.
then you're writing.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell my students all the time, because a lot of students stare at that blank screen and they get really tight.
Yeah.
And they hear a lot
Of
of
course.
negative voices in their head, judging,
Yeah.
that's a run-on sentence, or that's not good grammar, and they hit the backspace button just as much as they type.
Right.
And they're just so afraid of producing something that isn't quality work.
It's not perfect.
Right, right. And one of the texts that we use in Writing Fellows is it's Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, where she gives some instructions for writing and life. And one of the chapters, I don't know if you allow swearing on your show, but it's allowing people to write starts with an S, ends in a Y, first draft. And so
Okay.
I don't use that word in class, but we do read that chapter, and I say, let yourself write a really bad draft. It's okay. You've got to have something down before you can
Yeah.
fix it up. So let it rip. Just
Get the
just
ideas
get it
out,
flowing, and then once you've got a bad draft, then you can work with something. You can't really work with a blank
Nothing.
page.
Yeah.
So that's the secret sauce right there.
Yeah.
That and the 1-inch picture frame. She says she keeps a 1-inch picture frame on her desk, and whenever she gets overwhelmed by the breadth and depth and everything about what she's hoping to accomplish in her writing, she looks at that 1-inch picture frame and she says, I'm just going to write the expression on the main character's face when she sees her father getting off the airplane. I'm just going to write the way that sunset looks through the trees, and then you can make it the whole way that way.
Yeah. And Bird by Bird is required reading for my Harvard class, so it's Harvard approved.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the title comes from a project that her little brother had to write or had to do, and he had procrastinated and put it off until the last possible minute. And it was the night before the project was due, and he was at the dining room table just with bird books all over, and his dad came up to him and just put his hand on his shoulder and said,
Microphone fell off. Fix the mic and then tell the story. Can you get it? There you go. Okay.
and he said, bird by bird, buddy, we're just going to take it bird by bird. And that's where the title of the book came.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you took these summer were they different summers that you took them?
Yes.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if like one was July and one was okay. So take the courses. You come back to school, and then what? How did you get the idea for Fiction Faction? Where did you come up with the name? How
Well,
did you decide what format it was going to?
Yeah. Right.
Tell me more.
All right. Well,
It was a collaboration, I would say.
was definitely.
I really wanted this for him. I think we even talked about it last year a little bit. I said,
Yeah.
you know, these courses you take, that's good stuff. Like, we need to pull that in because kids here could really benefit from that model, that workshop model. And I could see that he lit up when he talked about it. And I thought, you know, that's why we have a writing center.
Yeah.
We want to create a sense of community. We want to empower students. We want to have a positive culture around writing. So I just thought that he would be
take
the
this
perfect
idea
person to do it. So when he signed up for Writing Fellows 3 and nobody else did, I thought, well, here's your project. If you want it, I'll help you figure it out. And so together we just sort of like figured out how to make it work. And one of the things that's great is BHS now has this flex block built into its week.
How long has that been around?
2 years, right?
Yeah,
This is its
something like
second
that.
year, but
Yeah.
this year it feels like we have a little bit more time. I feel like it's a little longer. Maybe it's not, but we have it more frequently. So we have it 3 out of 5 days.
Okay.
And students get to choose
And is
how they
it
spend
like
that time.
a full period, like
It's
40
about
minutes?
40 minutes.
Something like
Okay,
that,
so
yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Sounds about
Well,
right,
I'm
right?
wondering, is it like a 10-minute thing, or is
Oh,
it like
no.
a?
It's-
Yeah, you have enough time to settle into
Yeah.
something and
Okay.
accomplish something.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
And so that's really nice because that just creates flexibility for all kinds of things to happen, you know, and one of those things is fiction faction. So I can turn the Writing Center over to Luke and ask if they need anything, offer them tea, and then just sort of slowly back out because I don't need to
You
be
get
there.
refreshments too?
But it's so great because I really love to be able to see that the space really is truly run by students, and that's a cool experience for me to not have to run the thing, but to just sort of step back.
So, how did you come up with the name, and how did you market it as a flex block option to get somebody to show up?
We had some bad name ideas.
Yes.
We
so
had a
many-
long list.
So many bad names.
It was
But
just
you have
one
to have the
entire
bad
class
ones.
period.
Yes.
One entire class period was, what are we going to call this thing?
Yes.
And we wanted it to have a little ring to it. We knew it needed to have fiction in the title.
Can you
and
write
we were trying to.
Or no?
That's more the Writing Center's purview, I'd say.
Yeah. He really wanted to have like a
Yeah.
kids that like to write fiction because we
Yeah.
do have a poetry club where students
Okay.
can go to write poetry, and we just wanted to create a space for kids that like to write fictional stories.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to bring my summer programs to the school.
Okay.
Specifically Emerson's, because it's less you speak, then you speak, then you speak, and nobody else speaks, as was Harvard's, which worked. It worked very well, but it wasn't really writer focused.
Okay.
And one of the goals of the Writing Center is focusing on the writers, not the writing. So I figured that Emerson's method, which was just a discussion, it was more natural.
Okay. Like a brainstorming session
Yeah,
type thing?
yeah,
Or-
just a discussion on
Okay.
what we've read of one person's work, and see if something productive can come out of it. Like all of my good ideas came out of workshops, and I wanted to bring that, and I think I have.
And writers need audiences. Writers
Yes.
need
Desperately.
authentic audiences. And I think there are a lot of kids, you know, a lot of maybe on the introverted end of the spectrum who are filling notebooks, but without a really meaningful audience to give feedback.
Kind of like, digital photography. You have all these great photos that live on your phone.
Right. And there's just something really cool that happens when the person who's reading it can have conversation with the person who wrote it, and it's writing is expression, but it's also communication. So there's that nice reciprocity.
So how many students on average, because my understanding of Flex Block, and please correct me, is it's like a period in the day where it's like, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, you sign up for.
So you sign up, but what about continuity? Do you need, because if there are these options, well, I want to do fiction faction today, but tomorrow I want to learn how to play chess, or I don't know what the other flex. So how do you get that continuity of your audience? Do you need continuity with your audience?
I'd say you need 2 weeks, or 2 meetings, I suppose. One meeting so that you can, I guess, introduce your story, or at least submit it, and then 1 week so that you can hear the feedback everybody's got for it.
You sometimes get new students popping in.
The numbers just keep rising. I got a new one last meeting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a limit to how many students at
The
any
Writing
one?
Center's small.
Yeah.
We can comfortably sit about a dozen students before we start having to
And we have
use
a
the
dozen
beanbag
students.
chairs. And you have a dozen?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's
But they all
suited
like
to this.
sitting on the floor for some reason. I don't know why,
Because
they just
they
do.
can't in regular classes.
Yeah, it's a cozy
enough.
space. We've
Yeah.
got beanbag chairs and, you know, different kinds of seating arrangements, and we've always got the hot water and the tea and the hot chocolate.
So you just mentioned, or you suggested 2 courses, at least 2, one
Yes.
to present and one for feedback. Does that mean that there's homework? Or do you get
wouldn't
all of the
consider it as
reading
homework.
done during that flex block?
Ideally, reading should be between meetings, but everybody seems more than happy to do that.
Okay.
And in theory, one could sneak a read or a skim if you read it, if you already read it and you just need a refresher.
Okay.
But yes, everyone's been very diligent and very happy.
Now, is it all shared electronically?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, we have a Google Classroom
Cool.
where I send out.
With your graduating
Yes.
in a few short months, where do you see, or how do you see fiction faction being sustainable?
I think I will have to choose a successor.
Okay.
It will likely not be trial by combat.
Why not?
I mean, it is tempting,
The
but
Prime Minister of Fiction Faction.
yes. I'm not sure who I will pick, but anybody who wants to
Okay,
will
so
take
basically
over.
another student kind
Yeah.
of taking over as
Yeah.
president or
Yes,
whatever.
whatever.
Prime Minister. No. Sorry, that job's already taken.
Military dictator.
But it's a reminder that it's probably a good idea to float that
Yeah.
at some point in the
I am
next
going
couple
to be
months.
graduating. I am not on the 5-year
Yes.
plan. I will not be here. So,
Right.
would there be any mentoring time to or is it just
I would not be
this is how I
surprised.
do it and
I
They'll
think
just-
I will definitely give them a good degree of freedom because
Okay.
this is it's
Flex.
a unique thing.
Oh.
We have a very large degree of freedom, but I will certainly give advice.
And I don't know Luke's specific plans for internship, but seniors have the opportunity to take their 4th quarter as an internship.
Ooh.
And in the past,
exciting.
I've offered Writing Center internships to seniors who have
Oh, cool.
personalized their Writing Center experience, so
Okay.
they can be available to help students around the clock rather than just during specific times in the day. But others have taken on writing projects or have reached out to the middle school to help middle school writers. So there have been some, there have been some different writing internship opportunities. So I guess that we haven't really talked it through, but if Luke's interested, he might use that time
well,
to
with his
to
reaction
mentor.
when you said internship,
Yeah,
it's
so maybe he could use that time to mentor his successor and create a sort of a manual for how to lead the club.
I could
So-
definitely see myself doing that. Yeah.
And publishing their work in an
Yes.
anthology,
Yes.
right? We can really get ambitious here.
If it can be said to have a goal, I'd say publishing all of their writing would be that we're going to have a dedicated space on the Writing Center's website.
The Fiction Faction
Yes.
blog,
Yes.
So it's a blog or just like
well, it's a website that has a blog hosted
okay.
also on the website. So, yeah.
how would it work? Right now, Fiction Faction is a flex block.
Yes.
Could there ever be the option of having it be an after school thing for students who want more? Or I don't know
think
how
it
that
could. I
works.
would not be surprised.
Or
Yeah, I think, well, in order for a club to be made official, you do have to sort of like let it have a trial run, and this is the trial run. So it's not an official club yet. It doesn't have an official advisor. But since it's so successful, I'm hoping that maybe we'll become an official club, and then could have
you mentioned that before. I mean, how is it just, how do you judge success?
Yeah, I would say if you've got 12 students who are really interested and consistent, then I think we could take that to the, I don't know, I've never started a club before, but the administrator that needs to decide if a club can become a club, and then we could have it be like an after-school official club. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to meet after school and just donate my time. That would be fine.
If you wanted to keep it as a flex block, does it still have to go through that probationary period, or?
No, I think I can host a flex block in the Writing Center that's any sort of writing-related activity. So right now it's just like come down to the Writing Center for Fiction Faction.
Is it offered in every flex block or just on Tuesdays?
Yes, Tuesdays, yes.
Wow, I just made that up.
Yeah, it is in fact Tuesdays.
But the Writing Center is open for writers just about every flex block, but they have dominion pretty much on Tuesdays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite style or genre of writing? Do you like horror or
fantasy? Probably, and all that encompasses. I prefer low fantasy, which is sort of most of the things stay the same, but there are supernatural elements, like, for example, the Prime Ministry of Hell. It is existing government structure, but eternal damnation.
So Neil Gaiman.
Yes,
yeah,
very much so. He is my favorite author. I mean, he could make a trip to the grocery store interesting, and I think he has.
He can make laundry interesting.
He has definitely made laundry interesting. He must have. He must have written about that.
Have to write about everything, don't you?
Yeah.
So November, I know I'm going to screw this up somehow, but there's like an acronym about November being novel writing
National Month to write a novel. NaNoWriMo.
I don't know.
Something like that.
But
can't say
with
I
the
know
look
either.
on that face, you probably had never heard of that before.
No. Well,
Just wondering if that ever tied into a theme.
I've heard of other English teachers sponsoring, hosting, encouraging students to pull that off in the month of November. I think it's a great way to get kids to just embrace what I said earlier, which is like just write, like stop judging yourself, just let it rip.
Get it on the paper.
Get a lot out, and then you'll have something that you can fix up and edit and tweak. But I like that idea of time pressure leading to just productivity.
although I would say get a novel underway in a month, because novels are, I don't know, well, I can't speak to novels, but stories are unique. Each one takes a different time to write.
Okay.
You can write some faster than others. So I think if you tell yourself, I am going to write this in a month, definitely, and if if it looks like I can't, I will speed up. That is not the best thing.
Although some people love that.
Yeah.
They love that pressure. And for some people, if it weren't for that pressure, they wouldn't actually do it. So yeah, I think everyone's process is a little bit different.
Oh, definitely.
I like deadlines. I need deadlines in my life.
I do too.
They motivate
I don't like
me.
them,
They focus
but I need
me.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta get it done. Yeah. What am I forgetting?
I don't know. Well, there was a question about research, to which I had a fun anecdote.
Yes.
Yes. I can't speak as to how specifically I conduct my research. It's mostly just Google. But the research that I do is almost never important. It's just the details, because
Okay.
those are the things that people love correcting. And I want to be the person who gets all the details correct. For example, just yesterday I did as deep a dive as you can get into the history of pinstripes. It's not relevant.
Okay.
And this is the fun anecdote. Just because I thought it would be a fun opening line, I decided to find a fact. This was a very difficult fact to find. And so, for a completely unimportant thing, I found myself 2 hours into Canada's census archives finding out, or trying to find out.
Stripes and Canada census.
Yeah,
Okay.
trying to find out how many people were born in British Columbia on October 12th, 1878.
Wow.
Yeah, this was not relevant.
All because you were researching pinstripes.
No, this was a separate thing.
Oh, this is a separate thing. Okay.
Yes, I wanted
October
because
12th.
1878, because that was one of my character's birthdays, and I wanted to figure out how many other people had that birthday.
In British Columbia.
In British Columbia specifically.
Wow.
And I never did find it out, and I have made it my life's mission just because I couldn't find it, purely out of spite.
All right. I think we're going to have a field trip to British Columbia.
Absolutely.
Maybe
great.
not today, but
I would not recommend today. No.
That reminds me of a creative writing exercise I had my students do, which was to blindfold themselves, spin the globe, wherever their finger landed, that was the setting. And then we had a big spinner with time periods, and they spun the spinner, and whatever time period it landed on, then they had to do some research about what would life be like in that place in the world during that time period, and just sort of write from the perspective of someone. And that led to some really interesting research and some like Google Earth
I need to do that.
dives. Yeah.
that would be cool. What did you do before the age of Google?
Yeah, what did we do? I used
You can't exactly go to the library and go through the card catalog that way. You know, it just
No.
doesn't have the same impact.
I
Yeah.
do not know how the great writers did it.
Any thoughts from any of your stories that you have written about taking it to the next level and doing some other type of medium, like a short story, turning it into a graphic novel, or a graphic novel turning it into a video, because we have a TV station right here. You know, have you ever thought about
screenplay. maybe.
what the next step?
Right.
Or is it like, okay, this is done, it's going to stay there on my bookshelf?
Somewhat frustratingly, one can't really be done with one's own work. Other people can say that
Right.
it's done, but you can always see something better. So I will always keep coming back, revising things. I will likely adapt some things. I already adapted a short story, well, the idea for a short story to make my graphic novel. I thought I was sacrificing it to the course, but it was really improved by the medium.
Cool. Exactly. Or you have like, you know, occasionally I'm like reading something going, I can so picture this as a movie, as a screenplay.
I have that
The
thought
musical.
a lot.
And then there's as a musical, yeah, let's break out in a song.
Everything's a musical now.
Well, they make everything,
Yeah.
exactly. But
A lot of things can be musicals.
when you are writing it, do you ever
Envision and
envision it at that time?
Not usually, I have
Okay.
to say. But I can see a lot of things as movies, just because that's my generation. We're the visual generation. But I usually turn that back and just make very vivid descriptions.
Okay.
Yeah, I often advise my students to like think about writing as though they have a camera and they can like zoom way in, or they can pan wide, and just switching the scene. So now we're in a different angle, and maybe you need a new paragraph or a new chapter. so yeah, thinking as a camera is a great way to think of as a writer.
So Luke will be graduating. What are your plans? Where do you want to see this project, either the Writing Center expand or Fiction Faction turning into something more, or what would you?
Yeah, well, when I think about our mission statement, when I think about our core values, I think about how we really just want to create a real sense of community, and that community got damaged during COVID. I think one of the saddest things to see was, kids not being able to do the things that kids want to do, which is to really connect with each other. So I think writing by its nature is a really great way for people to connect around the human experience. And so I'd just like to sort of follow that instinct of let's continue to create community and use writing as a way to do that. So I'd love to see Writing Fellows continue to be really robust and a really integrated part of the school community. And I'd just love to see kids enjoy writing and really just taking pride and taking joy and finding their voices as young people and as writers, because that's why I do what I do, and that's what I love. And I don't like to see kids think of writing as punishment or drudgery or something that they just have to do as a means to a grade. So to whatever extent I can help them find that voice and find that joy, I'd love to continue to help build that.
Speaking of grades, I thought of this earlier and I said, we're going to talk about that, and just Writing Fellows as a course.
Yes.
My understanding from being outside of the educational industry, I guess, is teachers have so many things to do now beyond teaching. Have to prepare them for the MCAS, have to prepare them for this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
How do you develop a course to get the school board's approval to have it be taught in school?
I
Does that
remember
make
writing.
sense?
Yeah, I remember writing a proposal. I think that detailing how this would help writers develop and how it would help both the students who are in the course and the students that those students would be helping probably sounded pretty good. So we had to apply and write a proposal, and I got a lot of really good support from colleagues and department head, and we started small and just grew incrementally.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I did just get notification saying that we're out of time.
All right. Well, it was a
Can't
really
see my
fun
timer,
conversation.
But, hey, I was told wrap it up. So I want to thank both of you
Oh, thank you.
for coming in.
Yeah, it's a real
and
pleasure to talk about what we
sharing-
love. Yeah.
Sharing
great.
your stories, both your experiences as well as your creativity. Wishing you the best of luck in your career,
Thank you.
in whatever direction, whatever the next chapter is.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. And I also want to thank you, Jessica, for coming in and for mentoring
Absolutely.
and having this opportunity available.
Yes.
So
It's my joy.
thank you very much. And I also want to thank everyone at home for tuning in this evening. And I hope you are inspired to kind of just let your creative mind go wherever. So there's always a story to tell. There are always unique stories, and every voice is important. So thank you very much for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you around town. Good night.